And we're off. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have with us Mr. Armand Glick. He is the director over the fraud division at the Utah Department of Insurance. Mr. Glick, thank you so much for being here with us today.
You're welcome.
All right. Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Well, I'm the director of the state of Utah's Insurance Fraud Division, where I've been since 2009. I started my career in law enforcement back in 1987 and really thought I'd seen everything there is to see and transferred over to the state and started working insurance fraud and opened up the world to a whole new exploration of things I had no idea took place.
That's terrific. I want to get to that law enforcement act aspect in a while, but first we have a lot to cover. But before we get into any of that, I really want to see if it's possible to step into the mind of people for just a moment and ask what could possibly motivate a person to commit fraud, being that it is obviously illegal. But regardless of that, what have you or the officers who work for your department seen as to what motivates or what has motivated people in the past to commit fraud, and especially insurance fraud?
Yeah, when it comes to insurance fraud, it's really different, and things have changed over the course of the last few years. But when I started working insurance fraud, the majority of people that we investigated would never commit another crime. They don't have criminal histories. They're not people that would see themselves as being willing to commit a crime. When it comes to insurance, and surveys on a national level have shown that people have a tolerance for insurance fraud. They think that they've been paying premiums for years, and when they have a claim, or if they have trouble with the insurance company paying a claim, they don't have a problem lying about things. They don't have a problem padding a claim, adding additional items to a loss that they actually didn't lose, or those types of things. And so it's different than other types of crimes. That said, so back in 2009, when I looked at the number of people that we investigated and whether they had criminal history or not, it was roughly 15% had criminal history. This past year, it's 55% have a criminal history. So I don't know what the reason for that is. We're not seeing in different kinds of insurance fraud committed. It just seems that those that are getting referred to us have more of a tendency to have criminal histories behind them.
Is there one type of insurance fraud that is committed more than another by any chance?
In our state, yes. What we call crash and buy or auto accident pass posting is the most common insurance fraud that we see. So that is somebody that's driving their car without insurance. They get in a car accident and then they quickly get on their cell phone and they purchase an insurance policy, or they reinstate an insurance policy that had lapsed for not paying their premiums. And then they wait a day, or sometimes they just, wait a couple minutes and then claim that they, obtained the insurance policy just before that accident happened.
Now, on my website, I wrote a little bit about insurance fraud and the different ways that people can commit fraud. And one of the things that I found while I was researching is that because the insurance industry is so big and so large, and because most businesses conduct obviously their affairs online, it makes it easier for fraudsters to take advantage. Now, can you expand on that and talk about the loopholes fraudsters find to commit insurance related crimes, especially online?
Sure. I mean, insurance is a business that's based on trust. Insurance companies are in the business to pay claims, and so contrary to what some of the advertisements you'll hear on TV or radio, the insurance doesn't want to pay the claim. They're actually in business to pay claims, and they have actuarial people that anticipate how many claims they're going to pay throughout the year in different types of loss categories, and that's how they charge or change premiums for that upcoming year is anticipating what type of losses they think they're going to see. Um, I forgot where we were going with that question. Ask me again, and I'll.
Oh no, what I wanted to see, where, because like I said, because so much insurance, yeah, it's online. Yeah, how do they get around all that to commit the fraud?
Yeah. So the old way of doing insurance is you'd have an insurance agent. You would go into their office and you would sit down with them face to face. Today, everything's done electronically, so on cell phones or apps. And so the insurance industry has changed to try to meet the needs and the desires of the generation that likes to do things without face-to-face contact. They just want to use an app. They want to be able to quickly click on things and get that policy put in place. So what we see happening that opens the door is it used to be that when you wanted auto insurance, that the insurance agent would come out and inspect your vehicle. They would look at it and they may even take pictures. Or if you're putting a homeowner's policy in place, they would come look at your house and see exactly what it looked like before they put that policy in place. Well, they don't do that anymore. And so it opens a door for people, especially fraudsters, to buy vehicles that are previously damaged and then file claims for phantom accidents and try to claim, they had an accident with this vehicle. A deer ran out in front of them. They swerved. They ran into a guardrail. There's no police report. Um, Oftentimes we catch those fraudsters because we look at those vehicles and we're able to determine that they did have prior accidents, and we're able to get pictures from those previous accidents and show that the damages are identical, but not always. So that's what opens the door is those types of things.
From what I found in looking through insurance fraud, there appears to be two types of fraud, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. One that is committed by an agent, and another one that is committed, or someone posing as an agent, or there's obviously the crime committed by customers or clients, as we've discussed. What can you tell us about the ways that each type of fraud is committed by either of these groups?
Sure. We'll start with consumers. That's what we investigate most frequently. That's the bulk of our cases. And so, as I mentioned, the number one fraud we see in Utah is those driving without insurance, getting in an accident, or having a loss. So it can be an apartment gets broken into and things stolen, or it could be somebody losing their wedding ring, that they didn't have insurance before that happened. They quickly buy insurance and claim it happened. The loss happened after they were insured. We also have consumers that have legitimate losses, and then they just add things on. And so you have somebody break in a house and steal $1,000 worth of items, and you decide you want to make that 20,000 worth of items, and so you add lots of things on that list of stolen property that maybe you didn't own, or instead of claiming a 27-inch TV, it's a 65-inch TV. Those types of things on insurance agent, and we have two different types. We have insurance agents who are really licensed as agents, and in tough times they sometimes succumb to those same temptations that people in society do. They get behind on their bills and they get desperate, and if they're writing a commercial bond, as an example, for, let's say, a contractor who needs insurance, needs $1 million bond, and the premium for that is, $6,000 or $7,000, that insurance agent might pocket that $6,000 or $7,000 and write a fake policy, give a fake certificate of insurance to that contractor who believes he really has insurance, but he really doesn't. And so that's outright fraud. Of course, we are in the business of protecting consumers against that type of fraud. And both the insurance department on the administrative side would take action to take their license away from them, but we would also pursue them criminally. We've also had cases where people that aren't insurance agents target others, especially if in a minority ethnic population. These criminals will prey on people that come from their own countries that don't necessarily understand the system. And so, as an example, we had somebody that posed as an insurance agent to taxi drivers out at the airport and told them, hey, I can get you better insurance. Instead of paying $600, you can pay $300. And so he wasn't an agent, but he told them he was. And so they paid him the $300. He gave them fake insurance policies and did this to several different taxi drivers. And the airport grew suspicious when they saw those policies and called us, and we investigated that case and filed criminal charges against that particular defendant.
Interesting. um, this might be a huge question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyway. How widespread is this type of fraud in the United States?
Well, so insurance fraud, up until this past year, we believe that insurance fraud costs the country around $96 billion a year. This last year, the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud did a new study, and that study, the results are $308.6 billion a year in our country is what's suspected to be insurance fraud. And that number is astronomical. And of course, we don't know what Utah's portion of that is. Our best guess is you would take our population base and mathematically equate that to that $306 billion and figure out what our piece mathematically would be. I haven't done that, but obviously that's a huge number. It's very concerning, and some of the surveys also with that go along with that are a lot of people believe that they can get away with insurance fraud, and so there's a lot of those types of surveys that have also been done by the coalition that kind of correlate together.
On that note, I wanted to ask, how are people? Okay, so you say, like I said, the coalition found $308.6 billion that that people have stolen through these insurance related crimes. How is the public, how are consumers affected by that, and how does that raise premiums?
Yeah, so insurance companies, when they have those, I mean, again, insurance is based on losses, right? And so the more claims we have, the higher premiums have to go to pay for those claims. And so if you have 306 or $308.6 billion a year lost due to insurance fraud, premiums have to cover that for insurance to be profitable and to be able to maintain and stay in business. And we want insurance companies to stay solvent. We want them to stay in business so they can protect our consumers against times of loss. When you're in a car accident, when there's wind or hail damage to your house or a fire loss, those types of things, that's why we all pay insurance. On average, the last number that I'm aware of is that each household pays about $1,000 a year in increased insurance premiums due to fraud. So, insurance fraud directly affects all of us. Each of us pay that $1,000 a year out of pocket. That's across all lines. So that's health insurance, that's your workers' comp, that's your property and casualty, that's your auto insurance. So it's not broken out, but it's a lot of money out of your and my pocketbook.
Oh, oh my God, absolutely. Um, Now I want to talk a little bit about what you had mentioned earlier, because again, while I was looking through this, I found that Utah and California are two states that use what is called targeted law enforcement to investigate insurance fraud. I'm sure there's others too. Can you tell us about how helpful it is to use this type of law enforcement as opposed to using civilian investigators?
Yeah. So each insurance company typically has their own civilian investigators. They're called special investigative units or SIUs. That's where we get the majority of our case referrals that come into us to investigate. And so their job is not to prove that criminal conduct took place, but whether insurance fraud is suspected of taking place and whether an insurance company is paying or chooses not to pay a claim. When it comes over to us, so out of the 50 states, there's about 42 states that have insurance fraud bureaus that are dedicated to investigating insurance fraud. About a little over half of those are law enforcement. They're either under insurance departments like Utah is, or they can be under the Attorney General's office, they can be under their state police, and some, such as Pennsylvania, are under a task force type organization. The advantage to having a targeted law enforcement agency is it's the only thing that we do. And so we understand what insurance fraud is. We understand why it's important to pursue those cases. And some of them are complicated, and and a lot of financial crimes are also very complicated. So it takes a special investigator to be able to do those things. One of the things we also do is we contract with the Attorney General's office for three prosecutors. And so we house those prosecutors. They exclusively prosecute our cases. The benefit to that is we don't have to go to the district attorney's office or the AG's office and submit a case for criminal prosecution and have that insurance fraud or financial fraud case have to compete with robberies and homicides and rapes and those types of things. Agencies or states that have to do that, insurance fraud falls to the bottom and oftentimes takes a second seat. And so that's the reason we have dedicated prosecutors and dedicated investigators in our state to address insurance fraud.
So it's more like just for expediency, would you say?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's any law enforcement agency can prosecute and investigate insurance fraud. In fact, they do. And so one of the things that we do is there's more than enough insurance fraud to go around. We don't want to have every case come to us. So one of the things we're trying to do is get out to local law enforcement, let them know that we're here. When I was in local law enforcement, I had no idea the insurance fraud division existed. And and so we look to be a resource to them where they can call us and ask, "Hey, I've got this case. I think it's insurance fraud. What do you think?" And we can help walk them through it, and they can do the investigation, and we can coach them or mentor them, or we'll work hand in hand with them, or they can just turn the case over to us and we'll take it and run with it. We do have statewide jurisdiction. So
So how do you or how does your division investigate a case?
every case is different, but the process for us is referrals come in from any, most of them come from the insurance industry, but we also get referrals that come from citizens who report neighbors of suspected insurance fraud, or family members. We also will get them from employees of medical providers or practices that report suspected fraud. So, but those come in, we review everything, and we look at solvability factors, and we look at intent and all of those things. And then we assign those to an investigator who then obtains the claim files from the insurance company. Insurance companies are required by law to report suspected insurance fraud to us. And we hit on that just a little bit earlier for premiums. It's a lot easier for an insurance company to just pay the loss, because then there's no risk of them being sued for bad faith, and they would just pay those losses and pass it on to the consumer in increased premiums. So we have mandatory reporting laws that require insurance companies to report suspected insurance fraud to us, to hold them accountable to look for insurance fraud, so that we can try to keep in premiums from increasing. And so it's kind of counterintuitive a little bit. On one side, the Department of Insurance is regulated insurance to protect consumers, and then on the fraud division, we're protecting insurance companies typically from the fraud that consumers do. So it's kind of a balance act.
To go back to uh, the money that is stolen from insurance fraud, how much of it is how much of what is stolen from that is ever recovered or compensated back?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. So as we look at we used to track that a little bit, because all restitution for insurance fraud victims used to be paid through our department, and then we would pass it through without taking any fees or anything else. And so we were able to know exactly how much restitution was paid. A little over a year ago, the legislature changed that and put that responsibility directly on the courts. And so now all restitution is paid through the courts. And so we no longer track that. But when we did track that, of course, it varies. It depends on those defendants. So some years we'll recover $1 million. The next year we recover 300,000. And so it's all over the place as far as recoveries go. Unfortunately, like many crimes, those who commit them oftentimes don't have the financial resources to be able to make full compensation. Fortunately, a lot of the cases, especially those auto accident past postings or crash and buys, insurance catches those cases before they pay out. And so we prosecute those cases as a deterrent effect. And we also look to educate the public to keep them from committing this type of fraud to begin with. We'd much rather not have to pursue criminal prosecutions against people with no criminal history for being dumb. That lapse, momentary lapse of judgment. Like I say, many of the people that commit insurance fraud are not criminals. They're not people that would see themselves as committing crimes.
For the people who are caught and convicted of committing insurance related crimes, and again, this might be a really broad question to ask, but what are some of the most severe penalties that the justice system can hand down to a person who is found guilty of these crimes?
Sure. Insurance fraud is based on value. So when you look at our system in Utah, if if you steal or attempt to steal more than $5,000, it's a second degree felony, which you can go to prison for up to 5 years, and around a $10,000 fine. I hope that's accurate. I haven't looked at the statute for a while, but If it's between 1,500 and 5,000, it's a third degree felony. And if it's below 1,500, it can be a class A down to a class B misdemeanor. So with insurance fraud, if somebody doesn't have a criminal history, oftentimes it's a white collar crime, it's a nonviolent crime. It's looking to hold the person accountable without them having a long-term criminal history. So many of our cases have plea and abeyances, where those people plead guilty, they serve probation, they pay a fine, they reimburse investigative costs, and a year or two down the road, that case gets dismissed and the criminal record goes away. Now, we do have many, much more severe cases. And so, one of my defendants um, committed 27 different insurance fraud violations over the course of time. And the first time through, he spent 9 months in jail. He came out, reoffended. There were new charges, plus all of the charges he had previously pled guilty to. Those prison sentences were then imposed, and he spent over 6 years in prison. So, insurance fraud can result in prison. It can result in huge, massive fines. We have people that have been paying restitution for over a dozen years. And then we have people that, pay their restitution very quickly, and 18 months later, the case is gone and they're back living their crime free life. And hopefully they've learned from their experience and share with others not to do this type of thing.
So this is like if for like you said, like a minor offense, this doesn't necessarily have to stick with you for the rest of your life or for years on end, basically.
Yeah, again, it depends on your past criminal history, and it depends on what type of insurance fraud you've done. We investigate. We talked about consumer fraud. We've talked about agent fraud. We also do bail bond fraud. So a bail bond is a type of insurance, and so we regulate the bail bond industry, and we will go after bail bondsmen that break the law. We do medical fraud, and so we go after doctors and medical providers that do fraudulent billing schemes, um, that will do sell you things you don't need, and those types of things. And so it runs the gamut. So some of those are more serious than others. When you start affecting the lives of other people, certainly those crimes are more serious. We do, by the way, not just investigate insurance fraud. We investigate all associated crimes within that criminal episode. So insurance fraud has to be part of what we're investigating for us to look at it. But we'll also prosecute forgery, communications fraud, pattern of unlawful activity, um, those types of crimes. So any other crime that was also committed in the occurrence or in the commission of insurance fraud, we will also investigate and prosecute.
With all of that we've discussed, what can a person do to be on the lookout for fraud or to avoid becoming a victim of it?
Yeah. So one of the things, just this last week, we started our community outreach. We haven't done this for many years, and we've recognized, especially in some of the communities, they're being recruited to commit auto insurance fraud. And so they're being recruited to pretend to be injured, to go see chiropractors, to get lined up with attorneys who then file claims against the insurance company, um, and ultimately end up with the insurance company paying higher payouts than are really required. Of course, if somebody's really injured, they should get paid. They should be compensated for those injuries. But we have a lot of people that um, they do paper accidents. they're convinced by somebody that approaches them that says, hey, let me use your vehicle registration and your insurance, and I'll pay you a couple $100. Or maybe it's somebody that's living in their basement and they're behind on the rent. And so their landlord comes to them and says, hey, I want you to file this insurance claim, and it's how you'll pay back your rent. All you have to do is tell the insurance company you were in this accident and I'll take care of the rest. And so anytime somebody's approaching you and asking you to do something to lie about being involved, that's a red flag. We also, for homeowners, I mean, we have door to door salespeople that come to your house trying to tell you, hey, we can get your shingles replaced on your roof for no cost to you. Your insurance company will pay for everything. Well, how they do that is they've got to look and pretend that there's damage on the roof that was caused by hail or by a storm. And sometimes there is. Sometimes it was years ago. But oftentimes, as a homeowner, if you don't know your roof's been damaged, you need to really question somebody that comes by and tells you they can get you a new roof without even going on your roof, right? So the key thing there is get multiple opinions. So contractors come into states after hurricanes, after windstorms, and they prey on people. Never give them money up front. If they tell you, hey, I need $1,000 to buy materials, then I'll be back, they never come back. They take your money and run. Um, they'll come in and have you sign over the rights of benefits to your claim. And what that sometimes does is the contractor now has the right to repair your roof. You're financially liable for all of those charges if the insurance chooses not to pay. But then that also gives them the rights to sue the insurance company for your claim value, and they take all of the profits and you take all of the risk. So you have to be really careful with people that are coming around door to door with contracts, that you really look at them and that you get second or third opinions.
Right. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to add, or anything else that that we should know about insurance, or just the whole aspect of insurance fraud?
No, I mean, insurance fraud is a crime, and good people get drawn into this. And just realize that, insurance fraud, the reason why it's easy to commit is it's based on trust. Insurance companies trust that when you file a claim that it's real. And because of that trust, when it's violated, um, we all can be affected by the increased premiums as a result. So, if you suspect insurance fraud, report it. If somebody comes to you asking you to do something that you don't feel is right, don't do it. you know, and realize if you get drawn into some of these things, it could make you criminally liable. And we certainly we'd rather not have those types of cases.
All right, then. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Glick, for taking the time to join us today. And thank all of you for watching this. In the meantime, be sure to follow the line.info on Instagram. That is the line period info for news, information, and updates. You can also find us on Threads and Facebook. Until next time, take care.